Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Avatar book review. This one is going to be for Avatar The Last Airbender, My Cabbages, the new Avatar picture book that came out this week, just on Tuesday the 27th is the official release date. It is only available in this hardcover version. I don't think there is a digital version as far as I'm aware, but yes, I have it now and I'm here to do this kind of review of the book where we'll talk about a lot of the details of this and stuff like this. This is a little bit more, there's more to this book than some of the other picture books we've gotten recently, like I Am Aang, Zuko Katara, and Heart of a Hero. They're all nice, but the focus there is mainly the art and the kind of presentation, but there's not too much going on in terms of the new content or story. Whereas this has specifically been marketed on the idea that, hey, it's one of these picture books, it's about the Cabbage Merchant, but also there's new information about the Cabbage Merchant that you didn't know about before, because it's 40 pages. It's a relatively large book, as you can sort of see here. And there's no way you're going to fill 40 pages of art just off the couple of appearances the Cabbage Merchant makes in the show. So there's expansion with the character to kind of go on here. And it's just interesting, just the idea that, you know, the Cabbage Merchant is getting merchandise like this, and he has kind of previously. He has a Funko Pop. He is a pretty notable character at this point, even though we don't have a ton of like super heavy details about him, but his lore goes into Korra with Cabbage Corp and his son and stuff like that. So it's interesting to finally bridge the gap a little bit with this picture book here. So, yeah, this is published by Quirk Books. It's their first Avatar release as far as I am aware. The retail price for this is $18.99 US dollars and $24.99 Canadian dollars. I got my copy from my local comic book store for 19 euro. So it's in or around that price. Probably a little cheaper if you go to like maybe Amazon to grab it, but you know, it's just important to keep in mind. It's a tall book, you know, it's kind of wide, bigger than, you know, a standard comic release and stuff like that. It's bigger than some of the other picture books, though Heart of a Hero has a very odd shape where it's a bit of a wider book, but this is more of a classic kind of book in the shape here. So let's, I suppose, get to talking about this a little bit. I'll give a brief kind of review here, then we'll take a look at the book, and then we'll get into the details of it. Overall, just very quickly as a recommendation, I think it's worth getting. If you're a fan who likes the fact that there's new information, you like getting new art, I think there's enough here to justify the purchase, because it does give you some nice information about the Cabbage Merchant. The art is very good, I think, throughout, and there's enough here that I think it just about kind of justifies the price point. I could maybe see the case being made for, like, maybe if it was a slightly smaller book, maybe the size of I Am Aang, just a bit thicker to account for the extra page count, that the price maybe could do it being a little bit lower, because, you know, at just under $20, it's getting close to double the price of like The Bounty Hunter and the Tea Brewer, like a comic one-shot where you get like 72 pages of like story and art, whereas, you know, this is 40 pages of art with a bit of story. You can see how the pricing is maybe the one slight kind of criticism to be had here, but it's not awful in how it's priced, I would say, overall. And I think just in general, because it's a more kind of low level type of content release, like you can't really judge this in the same way that you judge a novel or a comic release. I think for what it is, it actually does a pretty good job. I think there are criticisms to be had around just some of the, I would say, the levels of detail when it comes to some of the new stuff and how connected into the material we actually know about the Cabbage Merchant, especially later on some of this stuff is. And I think we'll discuss that when we get to more of the kind of like spoiler review, where we go through it in a little bit more detail. But broadly speaking, it's a very, very fun book, and I enjoyed reading the new information. I just wanted a little bit more. And I say that as a hardcore fan, but I also say it from the perspective of this book is meant to be sort of, you know, a picture book for kids. I also feel there should be more detail to make it clearer, the connections you're trying to make for kids as well. So there's two angles to, I think, that criticism on the detail level, but we'll get into that. So yeah, let's take a look at the actual kind of presentation here. It obviously, as you can see here, it is a kind of hardcover book here, but it does have the kind of dust kind of cover thing going on here. So on the front cover, we get this nice art of effectively like the Cabbage Merchant meeting Team Avatar for the first time. It's kind of like the Omashu incident. On the back cover, they go more for a kind of newer scene, kind of set post-series, where like you can see here the Cabbage Merchant meets like Zuko and Iroh, but then like obviously Team Avatar is there as well, which is a fun detail more towards the end of the book. But otherwise you can see, you know, they credit Mike and Brian for the story because obviously most of it is kind of recapping the story of ATLA, and of course the illustrator Bonnie Pang. Now, there is a writers basically listed for the actual story of this book. It says here, story by Rebecca Gyllenhaal and Jessica Yang. So it's interesting that they don't quite get the full starring credits, which I think they probably should, because I think there's just about enough new content, or at least it's presented in a unique enough way of like the story just from his perspective, that it kind of feels a bit odd to have Mike and Brian be the absolute main focus out here. But anyway, like I said, it is we do have a kind of dust jacket situation here. I know some people like to see the full kind of breakdown of this thing. So the book still has a cover when you take the dust jacket off, so that's nice. It's the same front and back, so that's cool. And then the only other thing with the dust jacket is just that you get your kind of summary, your description kind of blurb here, and then more detailed credits on this side of the inside of the dust jacket. And yeah, it just describes, you know, long ago the Cabbage Merchant lived in harmony, and it's the idea of meet the Cabbage Merchant, this humble, hardworking farmer who dreams of selling his harvest in a big city like Omashu, but the Avatar comes in and destroys his stuff, and it keeps happening over and over again. Will he finally ever make it is sort of the idea of this book. I'll also briefly highlight the section that they have on Mike and Brian, because it says, in addition to, you know, the co-creators of, you know, award-winning Nick series Avatar and Korra, they currently serve as co-chief creative officers of Avatar Studios, developing new content for the extended Avatar verse. And that is one of the first times, not that Avatar Studios has ever been mentioned, but that they actually explain in one of these books what Avatar Studios is, and the idea that, hey, did you know there's new stuff coming out in Avatar that is kind of properly being worked on, developed. It doesn't say animation here, but you know that's implied from that. Just a little detail, but I think it's worth kind of highlighting here. But yeah, otherwise, as you can see here, it is a kind of hardcover book. The spine is pretty simple. It just has, you know, the kind of creatives, my Cabbages, the Quirk book logo, and then we get into the kind of insides here. So the inside covers are actually kind of interesting, front and back. You can see here they have the map of the world surrounded by cabbages, but you'll note that the kind of markers on the map are kind of different front and back. So on the back of the book, you get basically the Cabbage Merchant's kind of journey throughout the world kind of marked out. So what we have here is basically, I think it's here, he's from Gowling, which is down here. He then goes to Omashu to come to fulfill his dreams. Eventually he makes his way over to Ba Sing Se up here, and then of course eventually opens up his restaurant in Cranefish Town over here, which is what they kind of highlight in the front section of the book here, with the idea that this is the Cabbage Delicacies Bistro, and again it is marked here, Cranefish Town, you know, will become Republic City, of course, and that will go on to become Cabbage Corp effectively one day. So the presentation I think is quite nice in the book, and so, you know, the point earlier on about, okay, they actually make good use of the fact that the book is quite big. This might feel a little bit cramped in a smaller book, having the kind of full map here. And from there, let's get into actually talking about the book in a little bit more detail. So Open up, of course, we have some kind of standard kind of credits style pages with some art inserts. There's our first actual kind of 2-page spread in the book, highlighting that, the art is going to be this mix of, some of it is a little bit more kind of comic panel style with the kind of different stages of the story and some text. Some of it is a bigger piece of art with the text kind of inserted into like gaps, exclusively for it. So very cool opening, funny. Long ago the cabbage merchant lived in harmony, then everything changed when the Avatar attacked. And we do cover like a lot of the I would say the new information is quite front loaded in the book, in that like I would say almost this first page here, where you get of course the visual reveal of like this is the cabbage merchant's wife here. You have of course his son and his daughter over here. So there's some fun little details like that, just so we get to meet his full family. This is of course little Lao Gan Lan, who of course will be the owner of Cabbage Corp in the Korra era, of course. So nice to get those details. But they don't name any of these other characters. The cabbage merchant, as we see from this opening page, gets a name. He is Merchant Sai, C-A-I. I apologize if I'm pronouncing that wrong. I did look up how to pronounce it, and there seems to be a bit of confusion from what I saw online about maybe the correct way to do this. So maybe correct me below if I'm saying it wrong. But I'm going with Sai for his name here. But again, we know his son's name, so why don't you include that? And then, hey, like his wife is not just only in this opening page of the book. Like, what's her name? What's the daughter's name? We didn't know he had a daughter. That's all kind of interesting. Plus some other details we get. He's from Gaoling, and that cabbages is a thing in his family history. He grows up, runs the roadside cabbage stand like his mother had, and her mother before her. So it's on the mother's side of his family, is where the cabbages kind of connection comes from. But of course, his dream is that he wants to sell cabbages in one of the big cities. So Omashu, Ba Sing Se. So the idea is he sets off one day to fulfill this dream with the idea he hopes to be a success. He will then send for the rest of his family so that they can live in one of the big cities. That's what's going on here. You get a nice family shot there. This is one of the preview pages. It's nice to see a kind of closer shot of the family there as he starts his journey. But we do see sort of the flaw of the cabbage merchant, which is that he just spends days traveling with these fresh cabbages. And so when he arrives at Omashu, there's a reason those cabbages get rejected, because he was sleeping in those cabbages on his journey from Gaoling to Omashu. And so we do cover the idea of like we get through like, yeah, he loses his first batch of cabbages to the Omashu guards. Then once he gets inside, eventually his next batch of cabbages goes to, of course, the Team Avatar landing on them. And we get, as we go through the book, this is the kind of the whole gimmick of the book. We get these big My Cabbages. The logo of the book sort of turns up again here, and we get a few key shots of that. So this is his first example of the Avatar and his friends being menaces to him, and especially because in his mind, he doesn't really get his justice in Omashu, because King Bumi just throws Aang a feast, and he's absolutely confused about this. So after 2 failures in Omashu, he decides to leave. He even writes a letter home saying that people are very hostile to cabbages here, headed to greener cabbage pastures. With love and cabbages, Papa Sai. Then we get his second appearance in the show, which is the seedy merchant's pier. So we get him arriving there for basically the events of the waterbending scroll. Now this is obviously one of his, I suppose, least important kind of appearances. We just get the idea that as part of the action scene of Team Avatar running away from pirates, his cabbages do go down because Aang kind of sends an air blast going backwards, and he feels, okay, I've got to move on straight away. This place is worse than Omashu, because it was maybe other reasons why he lost his cabbages in Omashu, but there's just sort of criminals, antics going on in this place. He needs to move on. There's a little detail here where like Iroh and Zuko are there, like as he's kind of picking up his cabbages, and there's just a note of like, I wonder if you can make tea out of cabbages, Iroh says. From there he decides to go to Ba Sing Se, so it hasn't worked out for him in Omashu or the seedy merchant's pier, so he's going to go to Omashu. Now interestingly, they don't actually cover his like third appearance in the show. They don't cover the Full Moon Bay appearance of the Cabbage Merchant, which is a bit of an odd one, because the whole basis of this book is that we're using those appearances from the show to kind of construct this book around, but we kind of ignore one of them. It's a bit of an odd choice. Well, we do cover the idea, his journey from the pier to Ba Sing Se is quite long. He crosses rivers, he crosses over this bridge where there's turtle ducks below it. Very interesting detail here is he goes through the desert, and you'll note there Wan Shi Tong's library, and the idea of like Team Avatar are on their way. So somewhere in the desert along that whole incident, he was passing through at the same time, which is just a funny thought to have, that he was right there the whole time. He does eventually arrive at Ba Sing Se. Like I said, they skip over the Full Moon Bay thing, but we're building up to his appearance here in the Tales of Ba Sing Se during the Tale of Aang, where the animals come in and wreck his stall. But of course, the animals are basically led by Aang, which causes the problem once again. The arrival in Ba Sing Se, this is a lovely double-page spread of art here. The Cabbage Merchant getting to see Ba Sing Se for the first time. Really, really nice. But we move on, and he likes it in Ba Sing Se. It's a giant, big, bustling city. He obviously likes this, likes being involved in the action to a certain degree. Interestingly, he notes no one else is selling cabbages, so the market is open here. He could be a success as the only one offering cabbages. There's a fun, again, continuity detail here of, because we're building into like the Tales of Ba Sing Se, he's selling his cabbages as Toph and Katara walk by during the tale of Toph and Katara. So there are some fun continuity details like that. And of course, you could get the rampage here from the Tale of Aang, and another My Cabbages, of course. But then we get probably one of the most, in a way, like odd, unexpected kind of details in the book, which is that as he's picking up his cabbages this time, a man in fine robes walks up to him and is like, "Hey, have you heard about the Avatar, basically? Do you know anything about him? I'm a playwright. I'm writing the saga of the heroic, Avatar, who is the last Airbender. This is Pu On Tim, the writer of the playwright for The Boy in the Iceberg that we see in Ember Island Players." Now, again, they don't name him. He is just a man, and then says he's a playwright, so he's just referred to basically as, this playwright guy. And so we get the idea that, like, I suppose this is how he comes into contact with Pu On Tim, and where we get the whole surprisingly knowledgeable merchant of cabbages line is, of course, the Cabbage Merchant being like, that Airbender, the Avatar, he's not a hero, he's a villain, he's always destroying my cabbages. Let me tell you something about the Avatar. And that's just the setup for, it's not an appearance from the Cabbage Merchant in 317, but it's the last kind of reference within the show to the Cabbage Merchant. So they explain that. So the rest of the book is kind of newer content, basically. So we get the idea after this that a couple of months pass and things are actually going well in Ba Sing Se. He eventually, after the war, sends for his family. They come to live in Ba Sing Se as well, and he is selling cabbages quite well. His dream is coming true. And it is just noted that, okay, the Avatar has saved the world and sort of allowed this to happen, but he hopes the Avatar stays away from his cabbages. But then, he sees Momo again. Momo takes one of his cabbages and he thinks it's all going to go wrong. It's like, what's going to happen next? Is Appa going to crash into them? But no. Zuko comes over, and of course it's like Zuko wearing his kind of end of show kind of outfit, basically, and it's set clearly after the end of the show. Though again, details. Why do you have the characters wearing their book 2 outfits here when we're talking about post series? They should be wearing their book 3 outfits or their comic outfits realistically here. These details do matter. I don't understand why this seems to be a continuing problem in some of this stuff of they seem obsessed with, we'll portray Aang as wearing his book 1 and 2 outfit, even though that outfit got destroyed. At this point, it's so odd. But the key point here is Zuko comes over and is like, My name is Zuko. Allow me to apologize on Aang's behalf. He didn't mean to harm any of your cabbages. And now that he's defeated the Fire Lord, I'm the new leader of the Fire Nation, and together we intend to restore harmony to the Four Nations. Let me buy all of your cabbages to make it up to you." And the cabbage merchant is like, "I accept your apology and your money." And Zuko now has a big pile of cabbages. "What do I do with them?" he asks. And the cabbage merchant is like, "I have an idea." And so he and his family go back with Zuko and Team Avatar to the Jasmine Dragon, and they all have this big kind of cabbage-based kind of meal celebration with tea together here, where they all kind of, I suppose, make up to a certain degree for everything that happened. So yeah, cabbage cookies are served, cabbage noodles, cabbage soup, and he notes to his wife, maybe the Avatar isn't so bad after all. So finally he has a bit of a better view on Aang here overall, which is pretty fun. But also, this is clearly where the cabbage merchant gets the idea that maybe I should open up my own kind of restaurant style thing, because this worked out really well. I can make stuff myself out of cabbages, and so the idea that kind of the Jasmine Dragon inspires him to a certain degree overall. And I suppose getting the money from Zuko, I suppose, maybe helps that to actually happen. And so we just end the book with the idea of, yes, he does open the Cabbage Delicacies Bistro. Once again, it isn't named, though, you know, they do have the kind of Chinese text, I guess, to kind of translate there if you want it. But again, why don't they actually just say what it is? They don't say that it's not in Ba Sing Se. They don't say that we cut from this page to this page, and the cabbage merchant has gone from being in Ba Sing Se to suddenly being in Cranefish Town. And the detail, of course, is that, like, they cover it on the map, that it's a different location, but they don't say it here, and they rely on you to, like, inherently know this already. It's just a bit of a frustrating thing when it comes to, again, some of the details not being quite here. So yeah, they just note that, yes, he notes here that his cabbages are safer in a restaurant than they are in just a stall out on the streets, basically, and he's going to be ready if his cabbages are ever threatened again. And now, whenever customers come into his restaurant, he says, "Welcome, come in and try my cabbages." So a positive message here in green, rather than the kind of angry exclamation of "my cabbages" from like the title and every other time in the book. There's, I suppose, a slight setup there that, you know, Lau is clearly next in line to take over here, but again, still not named, and they don't go into the Korra stuff in the book overall, or name any of the characters. So that's where it ends. Obviously, there's a few questions that you kind of have here in terms of, like, were they even, like, allowed to go into the Korra stuff if they wanted to? Could they have recapped the comics if they kind of wanted to? How does that work across publishers? That, like, if you have the Avatar license, are you allowed to just do that? But then, would they have needed to also get the Korra license for this book to also feature Korra content? That's a very confusing thing, because very clearly it's an Avatar: The Last Airbender book, and we are still facing the continued issue going forward of, like, what is the Avatar franchise called overall? Of course, we addressed there that the slipcase kind of mentions the idea of the Avatar verse, but no one really calls it that. That's a little bit frustrating, but it's a good book. It's fun, it's entertaining. The art, I think, is very good. I do like the new details that we do get. It's just that I wish they had followed through on that marketing point a little bit more. That it would have been so much cooler coming out of this book having the name for the members of his family. It's not like you're naming like 12 characters. I want you to name 2 additional characters and just refer to his son's name, which we already know. And it's the same with some of the other stuff. It's like, why did they skip over his 3rd appearance from the show in Full Moon Bay? Why didn't we do that? Why didn't we address that he's opened his restaurant in Cranefish Town, somewhere else? Why isn't Puan Tim mentioned by name? These are not like things where I say it because it needs to be like technically correct and I'm a hardcore fan. It's like for kids as well. you expect like what 4 to 8 year olds or something like that to make these connections to those things without you like actually stating the information we already know. It's it's odd to me, and it comes across as like you never really maybe think about the writing process for a book like this, but stuff like that really makes you think of like, was there a version of the text where it did include names? Were they told to take them out? You know, to a certain degree, why did they name the cabbage merchant? Like, I would say that this book would work without giving the cabbage merchant a name, just always referring to him as the cabbage merchant. But because you gave him the name, it feels like, oh, well, the door was open to presenting other characters' names, but you didn't really do it. It's just a frustration. It's still, I think, an enjoyable book, and in my mind, I definitely recommend it. So I would say, especially if you can get the book for maybe a little bit cheaper than the full kind of retail price, I definitely say grab it, because I think the new content is good enough combined with the good art to make it a very worthwhile Avatar book release. I do just come out of it still kind of, I think, wanting a bit more information on the Cabbage Merchant, and it maybe wasn't as comprehensive in terms of its new information as I kind of wanted it to be, but still very good. So in the comments, let me know what your thoughts are on my Cabbages, but that has been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.